Well, it's time to talk fully about Captain America 4, aka Captain America Brave New World. Is this movie too political? How does it hold up compared to the rest of the MCU? Let's talk about that. This is my full spoiler review, so before we get into it, I just want to say, spoiler warnings in effect. Spoiler warnings. Watch out. You've been warned. We're going to be talking spoilers. If you don't want me to spoil the film for you, no worries. I did an immediate reaction coming out of the theater, and I always try to keep those spoiler-free as just my initial takeaways and thoughts. Now, the good news is, as I said before in my previous immediate reaction, there's not a lot here for me to spoil, because if you've seen the trailer anyways, the trailer has basically spoiled this entire plot. Something that I don't like about modern trailers, but here we are. I especially don't like it because it's also part of my job for the content that I like to make to react to that stuff, which means that everything also then gets spoiled for me when it's in the trailer. But this is 2025, and apparently something that people need is to know everything that will happen in a film. Speaking of what happens in this film, what is this movie about? This is a movie that follows Sam Wilson after he gets sort of caught up in a mystery involving a mysterious attack on the newly elected President Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, aka General Ross, who now is the president, and when Isaiah Bradley actually gets wrapped up in that attack as well, being activated as a seeming sleeper agent alongside some others. Sam basically seeks to investigate what really happened with all of this, and the plot of the movie kind of tumbles out of that. Alongside this, we're also following President Ross and his trying to get a peace treaty signed between other countries to agree to share the resources that are found from the celestial that has fallen into the ocean. That's right, we're acknowledging Eternals, guys. And you know me, I'm one of the few weirdos that actually enjoyed Eternals, so yay. I really like Eternals as a team, and I really wish we got to see more of them, because if you haven't read Kieran Gillen's Eternals, go do it. It's so good, and we could have had something like that. But I digress. When it comes to Captain America 4, something that I really liked about this film right out of the gate was the action. I feel like the fight sequences in this are really fun. I feel like the action is really well shot. It's clean. Something that I also enjoyed in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, honestly. I felt like the action there was also pretty solid. And while the action isn't like anything to necessarily shout from the high heavens to everyone, you must watch this action. It's not the best action that I've seen recently or anything like that, but it's very solid. And let me just tell you guys, when it comes to action, I love action films, and there's so many bad ones that are not clean and are just such a mess when it comes to action. One of the elements that they incorporate into these fight sequences involves kind of showing us the differences with Sam Wilson's Captain America versus someone like Steve Rogers, and I love that. It really shows us how human this guy is, which is something that I really love about Sam's character and his approach to being Captain America, because he basically has to do it all without being a super soldier. So he does everything that Steve does, or is expected to do that, but all without having any enhancements, any superpower enhancements. So we get to see things like Sam having to take the stairs when Isaiah jumps out of a window. We get to see Sam in a fight, getting his bones broken, getting stabbed, and having to just keep going and be resourceful in fights as well. And that's something that I just think is really cool. We also get to see the commitment, the willingness, and sort of the military basis, I feel like, of Sam a lot of the times with his character in these fights. The film is not only fun as an action film, it's also really fun as a thriller, though as I said, it would have been nice if some of the things that were spoiled weren't spoiled in the trailers. But still, there are just fights and moments where you really don't know how things are going to go in that instance, and that was a fun journey to be on with the film. So even though I know the major plot points going into it, even if you've watched the trailer, there's going to be moments, I feel like, in fights where it's unpredictable, where you don't know what's going to happen, who will live, who will die, or just how we'll get through a fight sometimes. Like Sam Wilson's Captain America versus Red Hulk is crazy. And even just the kind of dogfight in the sky that we get between Cap and Falcon and the fighter jets, the pilots, is kind of crazy. The fact that that is like a huge conflict is about to break out potentially on a global scale. Like, we could be going to war if we don't settle this. The stakes are so high. It's a pretty crazy moment in the film. And I mean, the film starts out also, I think, being quite captivating in terms of the thrilling elements of it, especially the action scene that we get at the White House in the beginning. Felt like all of that was very well done and just very, you're kind of on the edge of your seat while it's going on. And that's what I come for. It felt very superhero in a good way. And although I really love Anthony Mackie in this and Harrison Ford, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about Sam and Ross and Red Hulk as I go through this, I really want to highlight some other characters that stood out to me. And one of those is, of course, Giancarlo Esposito's Sidewinder, who is so menacing because we have Esposito in this film, which I still think is crazy. I wish that they'd actually surprised us with him being in the film, because how cool would it be for Esposito to just show up as Sidewinder? Also, the connection to the Serpent Society is something that does not get utilized enough in this or hinted at enough. I honestly wish the post-credit scene that we got was not another allusion to Secret Wars. I mean, when they alluded to Secret Wars in Multiverse of Madness, that was kind of cool. That was like, oh, with Doctor Strange and all of that stuff. But every other one after that has kind of felt like, I get it, Secret Wars is coming. Disney, Marvel, you've already even told us Secret Wars is coming. I understand. Instead of that, we could have gotten something with Sidewinder, maybe escaping prison, like he said he was going to do in the movie. We could have gotten something with the Serpent Society, which I think would have been really cool. So there's a lot of fun moments that I feel like we could have gotten instead for that post-credit scene, and Sidewinder to me is just a missed opportunity to not be used more. Hopefully we see him again, but it's Esposito, so maybe not. I don't know. A character who I also didn't want to spoil in my initial review, but who I'm very excited to talk about here, is Dennis Dunphy, aka D-Man, or Demolition Man, as some people might know him from the comics. I didn't even actually realize that it was D-Man until after I watched the movie, and I was like, wait, Dunphy? And then I was like, wait a minute. And he is played in the film by William Mark McCullough. At least I think that's McCullough. Is it McCullough or McCullough? I think it's McCullough, so my apologies if I said that wrong though. He's been in a ton of things, a lot of shows, a few episodes here and there, and I just thought he was so good in this, and he just made me interested in the character through the way he played the character. He was just so likable and just seemed like such a good, solid hero dude, which kind of is what Dunphy is a little bit like in the comics, but also Dunphy's really interesting in the comics because he's a very complex character. He goes through a lot of stuff. To just give you a little summary of who this guy is, he's basically a wrestler who kind of turned into a superhero and who has sometimes also been manipulated into being a villain. He initially gets his powers from the Power Broker. He ends up as an ally with Captain America. He also has kind of been a part of the Avengers, and he's also been a part of Wonder Man's Revengers, who were basically an anti sort of Avengers team. Not only that, but Dunphy has also dealt with issues like schizophrenia, addiction, homelessness. This is a character who has been through the ringer. He's literally died and come back, and sometimes come back when it wasn't even intended for him to come back. It's a whole thing. He's also a character in more recent years who also came out as being queer in a really chill, kind of underplayed way in the comics. Came out in Captain America Sam Wilson years ago now, so this isn't anything new. But yeah, I just feel like the approach of this character, for him being kind of all over the place and a little bit wacky, especially in terms of that initial look with his like borrowed costume pieces. He also feels down to earth. He's just a really interesting C-list hero. So I might do a whole video on him just to break down everything he's been through, just because I think he's interesting. I don't know if people would be here for a Demolition Man video, but if you're one of those people, let me know in the comments and maybe I will do it. Maybe I will do a random video on Demolition Man. Why not? It's my channel, I do what I want. Another character that I really loved in this, and that I literally gasped when Red Hulk hit him, crushed him, is Redwing, who I know Redwing is just a drone in this, because Marvel are cowards, and they wouldn't get a Falcon. But I do think Redwing is still super cool, and I feel like if there are changes that were made to this film, maybe one of them is that Redwing had more of a personality, because I felt sad when Redwing was destroyed here, and yet I feel like probably no one else felt that because no one else has a weird connection to Redwing like I do. But I bet there was more personality and more sadness that could have been had. I bet it all got cut out. Speaking of things that got cut out or changed, I do feel like there are a few moments in this that could have just been a bit cleaner. There are some continuity things, and I definitely think reshoots likely messed up some of that stuff. Now, it's nothing major. Some people are talking about this as though it's incomprehensible because of the reshoots and rewrites and whatever. I don't think at any point this film is incomprehensible. And if you think it's incomprehensible, I want to know what you watched. But what I will say when it comes to this is that there were a few things I did notice that not the end of the world, but it is kind of like a, oh boy, that's not great. Some of those things are when Joaquin and Sam initially break into the base where Samuel Stearns is being held. They have to rewire the security box to get in. It's basically like an access code box. And then they manage to just get in time before the guards resume their rounds and kind of come around to that area. And the box is like perfectly closed and looks like it hasn't been tampered with at all. But the last time we saw them, they had it like all open. That was a minor thing, but I still was like, continuity, please. There are also some really, really bad green screen moments nearer to the end of the film, which tell you that, yeah, this film went through reshoots. And there are moments when people are having conversations, especially with the one with Sam and Ross when they're on the boat near the end and they're in the ocean and they're dealing with Japan coming in on the Celestial. They have this conversation and there are moments when the camera's on Sam and I really wanted to see what Ross was doing, either what he was saying or how he was reacting, and we stay on Sam. And this isn't the only conversation where it happens. There are a few others. It's just the one that I remember the best. And I kept thinking, man, I really want to see what Harrison Ford's face is doing. But it's probably because they couldn't get Harrison Ford back for reshoots that day or whatever. I'm assuming a lot of those moments that we are missing have to do with the reshoots, especially if you're changing lines and so you can't show that person's face because the footage you have, they're not saying that thing. So probably also there was a ton of ADR in this film as well. Although it's no Madam Web, don't worry, or Craven. The ADR was fine. Didn't really have any problems with this ADR. If you don't know what ADR is, by the way, it's when people either dub their own mouth. So I would be here like this, and I might say something right now like pass the salt, but you know, I'm covered in the shot, so I could be saying anything. So instead of saying pass the salt, I could say, this is not where I left my car, which are two totally different things. I would be curious to see how much of this script was actually changed and how much the reshoots affected everything, because I do feel that the earlier on the film is, the stronger and more kind of cohesive it feels, just in terms of everything really feeling like it's coming together and not maybe missing a little bit of a oomph to it, is what I would say. I think one of the tightest parts of the film is the fight that we get initially between Captain America and Sidewinder and his goons when he's rescuing the nun and the priest. That's one of the cleanest bits to me, and I think was probably the least affected by those reshoots. I could be wrong, but that's just what I'm picking up on. Initially, it also seemed in the trailers that Ross wanted Captain America to join up with the government again, and that was his proposition. But then in the film, it seems like it was changed, or just this isn't something they put in the trailers, but I think it was changed to Sam being asked to reassemble a team of Avengers and basically become the new leader, but working with the White House, which I guess he'd still be working with the government, so it's still kind of a similar vibe, but it has a lot more big implications in terms of the MCU, kind of putting forth the idea of Sam Wilson as an Avengers leader, which is something that could still lead somewhere if they want to follow that thread. I would be interested in that. I'd like to see Sam's team of Avengers. Speaking of the MC Universe at large, something this film does really well is incorporate elements of the MC Universe into it, especially in the terms of stories or elements that I feel have been forgotten or kind of fallen by the wayside. So we get a reference to the Red Room with Ruth being ex-Red Room, which I thought was cool. We get the Celestial in the middle of the ocean, and sort of this race to get adamantium, this war over its tech that is within the Celestial. Something that I also feel like hasn't been touched on a ton yet or really utilized. This film also obviously goes a lot into the unresolved stuff from the Incredible Hulk, including Sam Stern's fate and Betty's relationship with her dad, Ross, and what ended up happening with that. Like I've said before in the past, although obviously the Incredible Hulk is part of the MCU, has been utilized, especially now, I feel like that is a film that kind of in the past felt like they just didn't really take a ton of the stuff that was built in it to carry it forward at all after Mark Ruffalo was recast as Bruce Banner. So it's really nice to see elements of that carrying forward finally. I also love that this story is just self-contained within the MCU universe as it stands. I think that's something that's really cool, and I like that it resists the urge to go multiversal. Nothing really wrong inherently with a multiverse story, but I just think it's hard to do them in a way that feels meaningful, because often it feels like a scapegoat sometimes pulling in the multiverse, and so it can feel kind of lazy. Although I feel like projects that have handled the idea of the multiverse well have included Loki. I think Loki is actually one of the best to approach that concept, and I think Deadpool and Wolverine did a decent job with it, although, you know, obviously kind of being a little bit more goofy with it, whereas Loki is a little bit more serious, I'd say, for the most part. Ultimately, when it comes down to this movie and the problems that I have with it, I think the biggest issue I have is just with the marketing campaign. I understand that it might not have been Disney and Marvel that leaked Red Hulk initially. You know, Brazil, McDonald's had those leaks, and I'm not entirely sure of the timeline, so it might have been they just rolled Red Hulk into the campaign to promote the film because they were like, I mean, the cat's out of the bag, may as well use what we got. So I'm not putting that entirely on them, but they did decide to roll with it as opposed to just kind of say nothing and let it be, wait, so Red Hulk's gonna be in this? What's that gonna be about? Will it be Ross? What are they doing with it? And make it more speculative for us even. Because of what the trailer gets into, in essence, the whole third act of the film is spoiled, and I actually felt that there were so many moments in the film that would have been fun aha moments for people who were fans of Hulk and remembered stuff from that film, like when the song that is activating the sleeper agents turns out to be talking about Mr. Blue. It's like, oh, okay, that's obviously Samuel Stearns. That's crazy. Could it be? And then you would get that reveal and it would feel really meaningful. So I think we kind of got robbed of some of those moments, which is unfortunate. Also, something that people seem to be having an issue with, I've heard some people talking about this, is the idea that in the end, the leader just doesn't like escape. He just comes back and lets himself get caught, and like, is he really as smart as he seems? And I would say I liked the way the leader was approached in this. I really liked his design. I liked the element of mystery they initially played with not revealing his face, his shining green eyes. There were a lot of cool elements just in terms of the way that shot and the design that I liked for that character. But I also thought he was a menacing and intimidating character. He is a smart guy, but ultimately he lets himself be captured because he knows he can never fix himself. He knows he's not going to be cured and released, which is, I think, what he was kind of hoping for. So he just wants to cause mischief. And ultimately, I think if the leader wanted to get free, he could get free because he's that smart. So to me, it's that he just doesn't really care about that. Ultimately, I think what this character wants in the end is just for Ross's reputation to be ruined by revealing that he is a monster, literally, because he becomes the Red Hulk. But it's also, Red Hulk is a representation of the monstrous side of Ross that exists on the inside as well. Something that I wish was explored more in this film was Ross's relationship with that monstrous side of himself. Obviously, he's trying to turn over a new leaf in this movie, but we never really get to see the struggle, I feel, with his former self and who he's trying to be now. And I feel like that's a missed opportunity, because if we baked in some more of the self-loathing that it seems externally Ross might be going through, but we never get to see sort of behind the facade there, it would be a lot more meaningful when he actually becomes Red Hulk, because now he is literally becoming the thing that he hunted forever, that he condemned. He is now literally that monster. That is Ross's worst nightmare, you would think, would be to be that. So there could be the fear of what he's becoming. There could be the anger of what he is and how he's been trying to change, but ultimately this is just who he is. He is Red Hulk, and that's basically like the inside coming out in a way. We don't really get that deep with it, and I just wish we had gotten deeper. into it, because Harrison Ford is a great actor and I did like him as Ross, but I just feel like we didn't get to play with enough stuff. I don't know if that's because Harrison Ford was held back or just didn't really feel compelled to go there. I'm not sure. I do feel like with William Hurt, even with The Incredible Hulk being, I think, a much more limited script in terms of the emotional weight and the emotional scope, especially for Ross's character, I felt like we actually got more depth from him. So it would have been nice to see more of that in the film, because I know Harrison Ford is capable of it. There are a few moments that he gets in this, but just it never really goes as far as I'd like it to, I guess. Ultimately, the film also features cherry blossoms heavily, and if you're wondering what that's all about, I think this is another thing that is a missed opportunity. Cherry blossoms are clearly supposed to be symbolic here, but the film never really feels like it comes together in terms of the themes that it's playing with in a way that feels super impactful, where you get to really take something strong away from it. Cherry blossoms, I think, are meant here to represent this idea of a fleeting moment, of maybe a time when it was beautiful in your life, a memory that you cherish that you can never really fully hold on to. I think this is also supposed to connect with us as the viewers, as people who are going through a world around us that sometimes often feels like it's crumbling, and yet there is nothing we can do about it. So a lot of the time, something that we as viewers reach for, something that the MCU also kind of embodies in a weird way, is nostalgia, happier times, happier memories, maybe things from our childhood, maybe things like superheroes, and that is something that cherry blossoms embody, I think, in the film, and for us, the audience, as well with this film, but which it never really feels like it's something that you connect with. I thought about it after and what they represent, and I think it's cool, but does the film really say any of this? Not in a way that feels impactful. And I think in a way the cherry blossoms can also kind of be a warning, because it's also reminding us that, you know, the cherry blossoms get destroyed in the end. And I think this is also talking a little bit about this temptation to hold on to things that are these good memories, but at the jeopardy of sacrificing what's really happening around us and being really present, even if things might not be so great. We get a lot of heart-to-hearts with Sam in this as well. We get like Sam and Ross, Sam and Red Hulk, Sam and Bucky, Sam and Isaiah, Sam and Joaquin. So many conversations. Also, just a quick shout out, Isaiah Bradley, Carl Lumbly in this is amazing as well. Everyone in this film is so good. That is one of my favorite things about it. The actors showed up and did their work, and it's good. It's fun to watch. We get a lot of heart-to-hearts though with Sam and all these people, but I feel like it might be a bit much. And I understand that Anthony Mackie, I believe, is also an executive producer on this, and I like his heart-to-hearts, don't get me wrong, but it just felt like there was a lot one after the other near the end there, and it would have been nice to either somehow make that more of like one big speech, or just chop it up a bit and have it interspersed so that it doesn't feel like a big run of that. Sometimes I do worry that this film, in terms of Sam's character, focuses more on telling rather than showing. And I think there is ways that you can convey something powerful with just an image, right? That's the power of cinema. So it doesn't always have to be two people talking. Overall, I like what the film represents, this idea of us all staying united despite the hard times, and that we have to ultimately put our differences aside to make a better world together. That is not easy to do, but it is important, I think, for us to see the bigger picture and work together and make the world a better place. I think that's a really powerful theme. I think it speaks to a lot of the aspects of Captain America, especially hope and justice, and so I like that. As for Captain America being too political, I mean, there's a lot of politics in this film. Literally, we're talking about Sam dealing with the President of the United States, but also he is Captain America. Captain America is a hero that is really hard to remove from politics because he is representative kind of a nation. I mean, he represents more the American people often than he does the American government, but there's always been that kind of relationship with Captain America, and also Captain America in the military. I mean, Captain America has tons of political stuff with World War II. If we go back even to just the first Captain America movie, that movie feels, I think, political. Now, I think maybe why people are struggling with this is that maybe they're new to the fandom, and so they didn't know that that's part of who Captain America is, which if you didn't know, that's part of who Captain America is, I feel, even, you know, from the comics and since the early days of the MCU even. But I think the other side of this is just that maybe the politics that they feel are coming across in this film, which I don't feel is actually overly political. I don't feel like it's super preachy or anything like that on either spectrum. Some people might not just like the message that they are perceiving, whatever that is. And so now that they kind of disagree, they think it's too political or that it is political. Whereas before, because it was aligned with them, maybe they just weren't as aware of it. So yeah, I mean, it hasn't bothered me. I've just seen a lot of people talking about it. So I thought I'd offer my 2 cents on that. But yeah, Captain America, he's a pretty political character and kind of always has been. So I don't think we can really get rid of politics in that respect. That's what I think of the film. Overall, I gave this film a 3 out of 5 in my initial review, my initial reaction out of the theater, and I would stick with that. I think it's a very solid 3 though. I don't say 3 in a bad way. I think it's just good. I don't think it's going to be the most memorable MCU film, but I do think it's really fun. It's really entertaining. It's got some good messages in it in terms of themes that we can take away. I think it's trying to bring together a lot of cool stuff. It's just ultimately, I think maybe the reshoots derailed some of these major themes and changed some plot points, which made it feel not as solid, not as strong in terms of what it's trying to convey to the audience. But it's still a really fun, interesting story, and I like that it exists kind of as a little standalone, kind of just as a little chapter over here, but still pulling from everything else and leaving us with a few threads to play with if we would like. That's it for me. Let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments below. And if you have not seen, I have been reviewing many different things. I've been talking about Invincible, so that's a thing we might have up here. I've also been talking about the MCU and going through the old films, so that might be up here. I did recently do a review of Incredible Hulk, so that might be here or it'll be up soon. So just make sure you click whatever is here. That would be great for me. That would be super helpful. But ultimately, let me know what you're thinking of this movie. I'd love to discuss with you. I love talking with you guys in the comments. And thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it to this point of the video, the end. That means the world to me. So thank you. Stay nerdy, friends. I'll see you next time. Be kind to each other. And until I see you again, stay nerdy.